Happy game day, Bengals fans. Welcome in to our TriHealth pregame live stream as we get set for the 96th meeting of the Battle of Ohio, an absolutely huge one on the calendar today between the Bengals and the Browns. I'm Marisa Contipelli, joined alongside Dave Lapham. And Dave, as we see the team warming up there, we were talking about it just a couple minutes ago. We finally get to see them wearing the all-black jerseys. I know this was a combination that I have been eagerly awaiting to see.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect game to break out the all-black look. I hope they go out and play like a bunch of bad guys. Not in a bad way, in a good way, bad guys. I mean, I think, honestly, the most physical football team wins this game today. There's no question about it. I think the intensity level is going to be off the charts. If I were playing in this football game, I would treat it like a playoff game. I think it's that big of a game. Kevin Stefanski said during the course of the week the Cleveland Browns are desperate. And they're going to play in a desperate way. They're like a wounded animal. They're dangerous. So the Cincinnati Bengals have to realize that, and they have to come out and play with that same level of intensity, put the big boy pads on. And I think this one's going to be big time, Marisa.
Absolutely. Well, to run through the Bengals inactives this afternoon, offensive lineman Fred Johnson, cornerback Vernon Hargraves, wide receivers Trenton Irwin and Auden Tate, and defensive end Cam Sample. They are all inactive for the Bengals today. And Lap, you hit on it. This is an AFC North game. They're typically physical by nature, but the way that the Bengals are coming off of a loss last week, the Browns are coming off of a loss against Pittsburgh, it almost feels like it's kind of a must-win game for both sides here.
Absolutely. I mean, if the Cleveland Browns lose this football game, they're 0-2 in the division. If the Cincinnati Bengals beat them, they're 3-0 in the division. The Cleveland Browns fall to 4-5, 0-2 in the division. The Bengals would be 6-3, 3-0 in the division. Hence the feeling of desperation for the Cleveland Browns. And the Bengals, this game's going to have to mean as much to the Cincinnati Bengals as it means to the Cleveland Browns, based on what their coach is saying. I mean, he's not pulling any punches. He's just throwing it out there. So, interestingly enough, Cleveland had 16 guys on the injury report on Wednesday. All of them are playing. I mean, there's a difference between being injured and hurt. In a game like this, you play hurt. And everybody's going to be playing hurt, and they're going to be playing hard.
Absolutely. Well, as we're getting a chance to see Tyler Boyd and, some of the Bengals offensive stars warming up there on the field, it's going to be a big test for that offensive line this afternoon, Dave, going up against the Browns defensive front. I mean, you have a guy like Myles Garrett on Cleveland's side who's just putting up kind of ridiculous numbers on the stat sheet so far. How big of a test is that going to be for the Bengals offensive line here today?
Yeah, I think all hands on deck to control Myles Garrett, and then you throw in Jadeveon Clowney on the other end, on those bookends. I think the offensive line is going to be tested, obviously, but I think you do anything you can to make sure that those guys don't wreck the game, they don't take over the game. If that means keeping a tight end to help protect, you do it. If that means chipping with a running back, you do it. If it means keeping a tight end on one side and a running back on the other to chip, you do it. If you have to slide the line and help with a tight end on the tackle that you're sliding the line away from, you do it. You do everything you possibly can, any and all of it. There's a bunch of ways where you can double team both of these defensive ends. And if you have to do that, you find that as the game goes on, that they're going to require two guys to block them, so be it. And then if I'm a wide receiver running routes, I'm not only running routes against soft coverage that the Cleveland Browns present, I'm running routes against the pass rush. I'm being real precise and decisive in my cuts and my routes because the quarterback's going to be getting the ball out of his hand quickly. You want to run your routes quickly, get your head turned around so you can locate the football. So you're not just running routes against coverage guys. You're running routes against pass rushers that you don't see. You have your back to them, but you know they're coming.
Well, and Joe Burrow this season has been one of the best quarterbacks when under pressure. And we've really seen him, kind of step into that and really evolve and improve as the season's gone on. What are you expecting out of Burrow today and kind of what he needs to do out there on the field to make sure that, he stays healthy and that they're able to move the ball?
Yeah, I think if his focus could be any more laser sharp, I think it probably was this week. These are the kind of games that Joe Burrow thrives in. The bigger the challenge, the bigger he steps up, and the more preparation he puts in. There's no doubt that he has left no stone unturned for ways to try to beat the Cleveland Browns from his vantage point and what he can do to influence the football game. And like he said earlier in the week in pressers, I mean, he has to get the ball out of his hand quickly. He has to make quick decisions. That pass rush is going to expedite his reads, and he's going to have to be so prepared for what the defense is presenting to him that he can make his progressions that much faster and get the ball out of his hand. And I do think that Joe Burrow's up to the task for sure.
We mentioned Joe Burrow. Got to talk about Joe Mixon as well. It seems like Mixon always has a great game on the ground against the Browns. In the jungle, he's rushed for over 360 yards, 3 touchdowns against Cleveland here in Cincinnati. How important is it going to be for the Bengals to establish the run today?
Well, Joe's mic'd up, so Joe's going to be out of his mind, ready to play. Joe's going to be ready to roll, and I think that that's a big factor in the football game. If Mixon can outrush Chubb, that's huge, and not only running but scrimmage yards. If Mixon's rushing yards and receiving yards are more than Chubb's rushing yards and receiving yards, that's fine too. It doesn't all have to be on the ground, but I think there's a mentality behind that. You know, if you're dominating, knocking people around, moving them against their will, those kind of things, there's a big ripple effect for the whole football team. Offense, defense, special teams, everybody takes notice of that. So the Cleveland Browns come in number 1 in the NFL in just about every rushing category you can talk about. Yards per game, average rush per game, 14 touchdowns rushing is number 1 in the NFL. They have more first downs rushing than anybody in the NFL. They're number 1 in the NFL in time of possession because of their running game. Everything is triggered by the Cleveland Browns being able to run the football. If the Bengals somehow can control Chubb in that running game and outrush the Cleveland Browns, that'd be a big, big factor in this one.
Dave, I'm glad you're bringing that up as we're getting a look at Trey Hendrickson, and we saw DJ Reader getting stretched out there. I mean, exactly. Chubb has been just so difficult to bring down when he's out there on the ground rushing, and it's going to be really intriguing if it comes down. It's going to be Nick Chubb versus Joe Mixon. It's going to be a great storyline to watch. But for this Bengals defensive front, I mean, we've talked about it all season long. They've been so good at stopping the run. They've only allowed a team, I think 139 yards rushing for a game has been the high that a team's been able to rush on them this season. Is this exactly why they went out and brought in Trey Hendrickson and Larry Ogunjobi to really help bolster that defensive line?
No question, Marisa. And, it's turned out in terms of pass rush. Both of those guys have been huge factors in rushing the quarterback, but you earn the right to rush the quarterback by stopping the run. And Hendrickson and Hubbard have set very, very strong edges in the running game, as well as rushing the quarterback off the edge. And Ogunjobi, with his ability to penetrate and disrupt, tackles for loss in the running game. DJ Reader. I mean, it goes on and on. They've got a good rotation of defensive tackles and defensive ends that have all done a good job stopping the run. And in this football game, it's going to be very, very important to be gap sound. You have to do your job. You have to stay in your gap. It's like, oh boy, Chubb hurt us over here. Maybe I can go help my teammate. As soon as you do that, he's going to run exactly where you were supposed to be. So you have to be very disciplined. You have to take care of your gap control responsibility and play 11 as one. Everybody do what they're supposed to do, and then that's the way you're going to be able to contain and control Chubb. Nobody freelancing, nobody trying to be a hero, nobody trying to help their teammate. It's like harvest your own crop. Don't go harvesting anybody else's crop. Harvest your crop right here in front of you.
Absolutely. And you said it, you get the right to rush the quarterback when you can stop the run. And, when it comes down to Baker Mayfield today, he's still battling some of those shoulder injuries that he's been dealing with. But Lap, I have to imagine part of the game plan is, trying to force Baker to beat you. You can't let him beat you on the ground, and really trying to force Mayfield into making a mistake or two.
Absolutely, Marissa. I mean, it's you got to make him one-dimensional. He's got a wounded wing. It's not his throwing shoulder, but still, he gets out of pocket and creates and extends a lot of plays. How will that limit that? How effective will he be doing that? You don't have to worry about him, in the run game, 11 on 11, running the football with him necessarily with this injury. And exactly, if you can control that running game and put him in a lot of third and long situations where he has to throw the football. Baker Mayfield has had great games against the Bengals because he's thrown when he wants to. If you make him throw because he has to, that is a totally different dynamic. When you're throwing on 2nd and short, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 or 3, that's a different ball game. I mean, it's hard to pressure the quarterback in those instances. If you're having to throw the football 3rd and 7, 8 and 9, and here comes the pass rush, that's a much different dynamic. And I think that's the key. A big key to victory is control that ground game, make Baker Mayfield one-dimensional, make him have to make plays to beat you today.
Mm-hmm. Now, we kind of talked about it earlier about how this is just such a big divisional game for both sides. But when you're looking at the Bengals, just what is it like for some of the younger guys on this team who haven't quite experienced a home divisional game like this yet? We're expecting a near sellout here at Paul Brown Stadium, and especially one where, this does have a lot of impact in the divisional race down the line.
Yeah, you hope in a lot of cases, like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, of course, has experienced it. This isn't his rookie year, but he's just literally finished his rookie year in terms of number of games played. Those guys played at such a high level. They played in the SEC where there are huge crowds, a lot of noise, playing for national championships and all that sort of thing. So, I do think that the atmosphere and all the variable crowd factor things, I think they'll be able to handle. The difference is the SEC obviously is the highest level of college football competition there is, but you get to the National Football League, these guys are good. I mean, it's just like everybody is, one of the best in the world at their particular position, their particular job. So when the adrenaline starts rushing, now these guys even play at a higher level. It's like a bunch of Supermen running around out there on the football field. And that's the big adjustment to get used to, is how fast and how strong and how quick everything happens. I remember that was my biggest adjustment, as a young player. It's, man, I knew these guys were good, yeah, and it looks fast on TV, but boy, when you're doing it in person, it's a lot faster than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lap, before we wrap things up here on our live stream, just wanted to touch on one quick matchup that you're keeping an eye on. For me this afternoon, it's kind of how Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson bounced back from last week, when we kind of saw an uncharacteristic game from the two of them there in the middle of the defense, and how they'll fare today against the Browns and what they're going to try to do. What's a matchup you're keeping an eye on?
Well, as a lineman or former lineman, how are they going to control Garrett? You can't let Garrett wreck the game. And the thing about Myles Garrett, Marisa, he doesn't only rush at defensive end. He goes inside and rushes at tackle. He had a big play against Joe Burrow up in Cleveland, rushing at defensive tackle, sack, strip fumble, recovery fumble, all by him, gave him a short field touchdown. This guy inside, when he's twisting and stunning, he is so explosive, so powerful. You have to identify Myles Garrett and take him out of the play.
Cannot agree more. We'll kick off between the Bengals and the Browns here at Paul Brown Stadium in the Battle of Ohio is coming up just after 1 p.m. You can watch all of the action on CBS or listen to Dave and Dan Hort on the Bengals Radio Network. Thanks for tuning in to our TriHealth pregame live stream.